Tupac Shakur's life was a spectacle that commanded attention. His infectious energy, raw and powerful lyrics, and larger-than-life presence were unmatched, captivating everyone who crossed his path. I dedicated myself to creating an hour-plus long documentary about him, yet even that could only scratch the surface of his remarkable 25 years. If you haven't seen it yet, I strongly urge you watch it for essential context, as I'll skip over details already covered there to focus on something new. One chapter I didn't explore deeply enough in the documentary was the shocking extortion Tupac faced from the Jewish Defense League. Yes, you heard that correctly. Tupac, as we know, never held back his thoughts. Whether you view him as a beacon of authenticity or a catalyst for chaos, the music industry he thrived in was a treacherous place, swarming with vultures and opportunists desperate to claim their piece of the pie, no matter the cost. To navigate this cutthroat world, Pac had to adopt a fierce, unyielding mentality to stand tall and protect his own. Tragically, on September 13, 1996, Tupac succumbed to his injuries from a drive-by shooting, leaving behind a legacy that remains untouchable. I go by script, and today I'm diving deeper into the broader Jewish influence woven throughout Tupac's career. Sometimes subtle, sometimes overt, from industry dynamics to specific interactions like those with the Jewish Defense League. This unexplored angle deserves far more attention, so lock in with me as we uncover a complex side of his story that's been overlooked for too long. Now look, this is not up for debate. Jews, whether people like it or not, have helped make hip-hop what it is today, whether for better or worse. Of course, the talent is what makes the music, but the distributors, labels, publishers, agents, and record label owners, well, they're all primarily Jewish. Not all of them, but many. When it comes to Tupac, I talked quite extensively about how his first ever manager as an artist was a woman by the name of Layla Steinberg, born to a Polish Jewish mother. Without going too in depth as I cover it during the 4th chapter of my documentary, Layla was hosting local poetry sessions in Oakland when the two met, and Pac and her bonded immediately. She already had some connections in the industry through her own efforts, and her husband was a local DJ. The two would host events gathering thousands of people, giving Pac a chance to perform consistently in front of crowds. Eventually, Pac would move in with Layla Steinberg, where the two would often read and chat for hours together. She references how the two read about a ton of things, one of those things being Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. This is where gematria comes from, a practice I use frequently to decode narratives around us, and it only makes sense, right? Granted, those who control the media come from said faith. Anyway, Layla helped Pac get his first record deal with Atron Gregory in the early 90s, while Pac was still just a roadie and a backup for Digital Underground. His eagerness to take center stage, though, was quite evident. So in 1991, Pac's debut track, Same Song, was released on Digital Underground's This Is an EP release. The project was distributed by TNT Records and Tommy Boy Entertainment. Tommy Boy Entertainment, a legendary label, is owned and founded by Tom Silverman, an American-born entertainment executive, Jewish by faith, who helped facilitate and fund the visuals for the track, and well, there's a sprinkle of Jewish culture in the video for Same Song, although it'd probably fly past most people's heads. Around the 146 mark of the video, fellow Digital Underground member Money B is dressed up as a rabbi with two Hasidic Jews dancing behind him. To be fair, the crew dressed up in many different cultural attire, however, this isn't something to be neglected. It was a Jewish label that helped release this project, while Pac himself was being managed by a Jewish woman. Now, just another interesting fact, Tupac actually lived in an apartment on 275 MacArthur Boulevard in Oakland, California, in the Adams Point area, which happens to be a fairly Jewish neighborhood, with at least 5 nearby synagogues, one less than 5 minutes away called Temple Beth Abraham. These are just subtle things most, including myself growing up, weren't aware of, and well, if that's where this video ended, then sure, there wouldn't be much of a story, but trust me, as in the case with Tupac's life, things always tend to get weirder and weirder. In 1991, Tupac signed to Interscope Records, which was founded by Jimmy Iovine and Ted Field. Now, Tupac was naturally politically charged with his speech and music. He wouldn't shy away from shining light on the inner city struggles, whether it was crime, poverty, teenage pregnancy, or racial inequality, but he'd also shed some light on geopolitics. In the classic track Changes, Tupac raps, "And I still see no changes. Can a brother get a little peace? It's war on the streets and the war in the Middle East. Instead of war on poverty, they got a war on drugs so the police can bother me." This track was released in 1998 after his death, however the record itself was recorded in the early 90s, around 92. Pac's political rhetoric stemmed from his mother's affiliation with the Black Panther Party, so from a young age, Pac was often thinking about things well outside of the scope of an average teenager. An early collaborator of Tupac was a female DJ, DJ Billy D. She recalls how they met on tour in 1989 while Pac was rolling with Digital Underground. The two had a great relationship, and she'd even invite Tupac over to her place to eat dinner with her family. My mom had photos with Yasser Arafat on the wall. Tupac, even as a young man, knew exactly who that was and spoke passionately during our lunch about supporting the historical struggle of the Palestinian state. For those unaware, Yasser Arafat was the former leader of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which to this day is fighting for statehood in the Holy Land of Palestine, currently under occupation by the Israelis. Oh, and just to throw it in there, during Tupac's 1996 MTV interview, before his segment aired, there was an interview with Yasser Arafat done by Tabitha Soren, the same woman who interviewed Tupac, so you start to see how these things just seem to fall into place. Anyway, all this plus Pac's mother being a Muslim convert herself probably inspired Pac to write those lyrics for changes, but it gets even more interesting. When I was making this video, a clip came up on my Instagram feed, and I swear it was a sign to put this out. Streamer Sneeko randomly did a live stream with Napoleon from The Outlaws, and respects to Sneeko for asking the right questions. Check this out.
Was Tupac aware of Zionists?
I don't even know if we was using that word back then, but he was aware that it was evil. He used to say the people that run the music industry is evil Jews. He told me this.
What?
We signed a record deal with Interscope Records. He was in prison. We was called Dromicidal before we went to Outlaw. He sent us out there. He said, I'm just going to tell y'all like that. The people that y'all about to meet with is some straight devils. I'm like, huh? And he even said in one of his raps, he said, my crew, we crooked, can be mistaken as Jews.
Well, you heard it right there. Pac was well aware and also even tried to warn his fellow members about the immense influence this group of people had over the industry they were in. The song Napoleon references in that clip was titled High Speed, off the Still I Rise album released posthumously by Interscope Records in '99, where Pac raps, and my crew who should be mistaken for Jews. But if you read the lyrics just before, the context he's giving implies those folks were up to no good. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Pac knew he had to adapt a vicious mindset to stand his own in the game. Also, another crazy fact, the track Troublesome 96, another posthumously released track produced by the legendary Johnny J, sampled the melody of Hatikva, the Israeli national anthem. The connections to them folks just continue to pile if you ask me. With this out of the way, let's get into the really strange part of this video. Earlier, I shared a video of Outlaws member Napoleon saying how Pac tried to warn him about who they were dealing with, referencing the Jews by name. Now, earlier I shared a ton of subtle Jewish references throughout Pac's career. However, aside from him being in an industry run by them, what else might have sparked Pac's strong words to Napoleon at that time? Well, according to this FBI document, Tupac, as well as Compton rap legend Eazy-E, now both deceased, were both being extorted by the Jewish Defense League. Now, names have been redacted from the document, but it states the following. During the interview, advised writer that and others yet unidentified have been extorting money from various rap music stars via death threats. The scheme involves and other subjects making telephonic death threats to the rap star. Subjects then intercede by contacting the victim and offering protection for a fee. The victim and their family are taken to a safe haven, usually a private estate, and are protected by gun-toting bodyguards associated with the Jewish Defense League, JDL. The subjects convince the victim they have worked a deal out with the persons making the death threats and the threats cease. The victim then pays the subject for the protection services rendered and resume their normal lifestyle with no fear of further death threats. So when Tupac rapped those lyrics, and my crew who should be mistaken for Jews on High Speed with the Outlaws, it's very likely he was referencing the extortion of the JDL and the labels themselves. Now, does this mean that the JEWs were behind the death of Pac? Well, in a court of law, technically not. But it could be that maybe they were the ones secretly behind the scenes, orchestrating things, and people like Suge, Diddy, Keef D, Orlando Anderson are all just pawns in a greater, much larger than life conspiracy, but truly, I don't know. Now, some of you might wonder who and what is the Jewish Defense League. The Jewish Defense League, or JDL for short, is an organization founded in 1968 by a group of young Jewish activists who were concerned about the perceived deterioration of Jewish life in the United States. They felt that mainstream Jewish organizations were not adequately addressing the community's needs and were overly focused on broader civil rights issues. With the slogan "Never Again," the JDL aimed to raise awareness about anti-Semitism and advocate for the rights of Jewish people, particularly in response to the perceived threats reminiscent of historical violence against Jews. Under the leadership of Meir Kahan, an American-born Israeli Orthodox ordained rabbi, the JDL gained national attention in the late 1960s and early 70s through high-profile demonstrations advocating for Soviet Jewry and pressuring the Soviet government to allow Jewish immigration. The organization later shifted its focus to promoting Jewish immigration to Israel and adopted increasingly militant positions advocating for the expulsion of Arab residents from Israel. Over time, the JDL faced internal declines due to its radical ideology and involvement in illegal activities, leading to a substantial drop in membership. By the 1990s, following Kahan's assassination, the JDL's influence waned significantly, and it was eventually classified as a terrorist group by the FBI. As of 2024, the JDL reportedly has no active chapters in the United States. I mean, the fact that this was being investigated and they were classified as a group, coupled with the words of Outlaw's member Napoleon, to me, it's pretty clear. Regardless of whether or not they were behind his demise in 1996, they certainly profited off the man while he was alive, and there's zero doubt in my mind that Tom Silverman, founder of Tommy Boy Records, and many other Jewish influences Tupac had in his life are still to this day profiting off that man's legacy. On my channel, especially when I discuss rappers, it's almost impossible I don't mention the number 38. It's a number that holds many meanings. Words like gematria, Kabbalah, Jew, English, rapper, killing, murder, death, RIP, energy, all hold that value in their respective ciphers. As I discussed in this video, the Jews admittedly have a major grip on the entertainment business and arguably help push the negative narratives that eventually become stereotypes of the black community. That isn't to put all the blame on them. Again, it's the artist that chooses to sign under their labels and become contractually obligated to fulfill certain requirements, if you will. And for all we know, these things are deeply embedded into the fine print of these slave contracts these artists sign.
And I won't sell my soul. I left wearing silver, came back sporting gold.
Look, I'm sure there's even more to this story I've yet to uncover, and truly I don't know if we'll ever get the full story, but one thing I know for sure is Tupac was more than just a rapper. He was a modern day hip hop martyr, but also, in a way, an agent of chaos. Whether one wants to agree or not, he wasn't entirely innocent. Nonetheless, RIP to the legend Tupac. I hope y'all enjoyed the video and learned something new. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching. By now, you guys know what to do, man. Hit the goddamn like button, share your comments below, share the video, and most importantly, subscribe, man. It's been your boy Script, and I'm out of here. Peace.